You know, I wish America would just fucking stop. Stopping is the one thing that a lot of Americans are reluctant to do, but y'all need to understand that stopping is the one thing that'll make everything better overnight. Now, a lot of you don't seem to understand that the economy is entirely propped up by the working class. The economy is entirely dependent on the working class. And even if 20% of America decides to stop, pull their money out of the system, quit their jobs, stop paying your fucking bills. That is something that has the potential to create a catastrophic collapse in the American economy. And when the American economy collapses, it's going to have a ripple effect all around the world. For a lot of people, you're just trying to keep your ego propped up. You're so fucking focused on your pride as a human being. It's like these people who work for the government and who haven't been paid for 41 straight days now, and yet they're still going to go in tomorrow and put in a hard day's work for the government. If we could realistically get those numbers up to 30%, it would destroy the United States economy. The stock markets would crash, and when the stock markets crash, those billionaires would lose a shit ton of money overnight. It's not as slow of a process as you guys think it would be. It would literally be overnight. You would be waking up to breaking news: the United States economy has crashed. Maybe if the grocery stockers would unite as a union and say to the grocery stores, no more food is going to be put on this shelf until we get higher wages. Maybe if all of these people who work these convenience stores would say, these places are not going to open until we get higher wages. If all of you fast food employees and service industry employees would just unite together and stop and say, nothing is going to open, nothing is going to get done until we get what we want. A lot of you out there, you seem to believe that you're powerless. You're not as powerless as you like to think. Like, what does that mean when 15 to 30% of Americans can just stop what they're doing, quit their jobs, pull their money out the bank, stop paying bills? If a lot of people just stop paying their bills this holiday season, it's going to fuck the economy up. The entire United States economy depends on you good boys and girls of the working class going to work, making money for these people. The entire U.S. economy depends on you, the working class, paying your bills. The United States is a house of cards, and if you want that house of cards to fall, you got to pull the cards out from the bottom first. A lot of Americans, you're saying to yourself, I have to make more money. I have to make more money. I have to make more money. Without realizing that as the costs of living continue to go up, the money that you make is effectively worth less. And I wish Americans can get a grip on the reality that the United States dollar has fallen about 25% since 2017. So that means every $100 on your paycheck, it's really worth $75. Every $1,000 that you make on your paycheck, you're really only making $750. If you made $10,000, you really only made $7,500. That's how much the United States dollar is fucked. And one thing is for certain is the United States dollar continues to fall in value. And it's such a weird culture that people are going to spend an entire lifetime to make more of something that's worth less and less every fucking year. I think it's sad that there's so many people in their 20s that are working 2 jobs with the hopes that they can start a business later or leave the country later. Everybody seems to believe that life is a infinite thing and that we'll all be here in forever, or that we'll die of old age. You're lucky if you get to die of old age. I know a lot of people who have died in their 20s and early 30s. They never really got to live their life. They never really got to settle down and have children and start something up of their own that they can take pride in. And I think it's completely ridiculous that somebody out there genuinely believes that they're better because they have a little bit more than the person next to them. Like the guy in my comment section bragging about how he makes $20,000 a year. Probably doesn't own his fucking home. A lot of people will never talk about how much debt they're in. You know, because a lot of times we just see people in our comment sections bragging. You know, we go on to social media and we see all of these what appear to be wealthy influencers, and they're going out to all of these luxury places without ever understanding that a lot of these people may be in credit card debt. They thought that they were cool enough to start social media and that we were all just going to watch them overreact to what amounts to a bland bite of food. Like that one black guy who coons out for the FYP, dances like a fucking idiot, takes a big old bite. And that's unfortunate that a lot of black content here in America is just a bunch of people acting like idiots. You know, we see Kai Cenat, and there's a lot of young black people kids who probably look up to this guy without ever realizing that Kai Cenat's cooning out. You know, Kai Cenat doesn't talk about social issues. You know, what has his mafia-thons even accomplished other than getting more subscribers to his channel? He got rich, you know, we got a little bit of entertainment. Is that worth the trade-off though? I think it's sad that kids these days, they don't aspire to be fucking musicians, they don't aspire to be scientists or engineers or entrepreneurs. All they want to do is be streamers and get hundreds of thousands of subscribers and likes and follows and what God have you. Because that's what the reality is. These kids, they see their parents working long hours and they don't want to live that life. And it's not that Gen Z is lazy or they don't work hard. It's that they've seen a society of people working hard around them, but the people that are working hard don't have homes. The people who are working hard don't have nice things. The people who are working hard are anxious because they worry about paying their bills. You know, in these Gen Zers, they literally say, what's the point in getting a job if I can't get a home? I could be like Kai Cenat and, you know, start streaming and live in a mansion. You know, because it looks like the mafia-thons are super fun. And imagine that you can have a bunch of fun and make a bunch of money while you're doing it. Or you could go do some miserable ass job that you fucking hate, doesn't pay you enough fucking money. And you have a culture of Agent Smiths that say to you, well, you gotta submit to the matrix. You just gotta let yourself be plugged into this shit. There seems to be a school of thought in America where none of us get to unplug from the matrix. The matrix just is, and we have to submit to it. Don't dream, America. Don't have dreams, just get to some work. You know, because a lot of people love to sell you on this idea that if you just go to work and just make that paycheck, then you're gonna be happy. Then how come whenever I go to work, I'm just fucking miserable? It never really feels like I'm doing anything productive. It just feels like I'm having the soul sucked out of me every time I go to a job. And really, that's what it is. You're being exploited, you're being underpaid, and that's why, you know, you're miserable at your fucking job, because you know you're getting fucking screwed. And I always think it's wild to hear Americans say, well, I'd rather be getting screwed than not getting screwed at all. Not me, you know, I'd rather live a life that is humane, a life that has dignity, not this shit that I'm doing right now, just wandering around aimlessly first thing in the morning waiting for the library to fucking open. You know, and I just think that it absolutely sucks that, you know, we have to all give up on our dreams. Like I said, I wanted to be a fucking astronaut, I wanted to be a fucking musician, and, you know, living in America, there's not really any pathway for those things. Turns out you can't be over 6'3" if you want to be an astronaut. You know, when I figured that out, it just killed my dreams right then and there. And, you know, now we see that if you want to travel to space, you have to be a billionaire or you have to know a billionaire. And, you know, I don't know any billionaires, and I talk a lot of shit about billionaires. I don't think Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson's gonna want me on their fucking spaceship. And yeah, if I was invited to take a trip up into space, I'd absolutely take Jeff Bezos up on that offer, or Elon Musk, or fucking Richard Branson, whoever. America's a dystopian country. Straight up.